Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker-Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hello, everyone. I have with me today Jarryd Chambers. Jarryd's primary businesses are the publishing experience and the processing experience, or as he would say, the processing experience. He'll say it better than I. Helping authors achieve their goals. Jarryd also serves as an audiobook project manager for Pro Audio Voices. His background and experience in film and TV, as well as publishing, provide a foundation for work in audiobook production that serves his clients and the Pro Audio Voices team very well. Jarryd, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Becky. It's great to be here and be chatting with you. I'm very excited for this one.
Great. So I thought I'd start off by just providing some context for our listeners, a bit of history. So Jarryd first started working with us at Pro Audio Voices as a client. So he was managing the audiobook project for his father, Gordon Lee Chambers, and his book, Searching for Monkumar, a mystical tale about finding freedom, friendship, and spirituality. So Jarryd, I thought, let's start there, which I think was near the start of your journey into the indie publishing and audiobook worlds. So first of all, what kicked you off in getting started in publishing?
It's a pretty long story and it's a pretty exciting one. But as you mentioned, Searching for Monkumar was really the stepping stone for me to land in the publishing world, the self-publishing world. And I was lucky enough to have a father who's a writer, and he's written many books over the years. I remember writing books with him as a 3-year-old. We used to sit there and write books together, children's books, and we've got a whole shelf full of them. So it's always...
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's always been sort of things that we always did together from a very young age. So it worked really well when he came to me with the book Searching for Monkumar, because it also kind of coincided with where I was in my life, because I'd landed in Brazil. My partner, she's Brazilian, and she had a contract. She's a doctor working there for 4 years. So I found myself in Brazil unable to speak the language and having left my previous job behind, and I kind of needed to reinvent myself and figure out what I was going to do. And it was very hard starting to find a job around there when you don't speak Portuguese. So it was quite challenging.
Right.
So I started spending some time online, of course, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And my dad came to me and said, look, I've got this book that is sitting on my hard drive and I would love to get it published. And he'd had some talk with another publishing company, and it just hadn't worked out really well. He was looking for a more authentic experience where people were interested in his book and what the story was about. They weren't just trying to put him through some sales pipeline. Right. He wanted someone that was kind of invested in it. So he said to me, well, why don't you publish it? And I was a little bit taken aback because I'd never even thought about publishing books. So I thought, okay, well, let me have a read first of the book. Let me see if I actually like it, because I prefer to be working on something that I have a connection with.
Right.
It's easier to get started on something, I find, if you feel invested in it. So of course, as my father and I'm obliged to say yes, but no, I decided I would read it and get back to him. Anyway, I read the book and I really loved it. It sort of aligns with my thinking and my beliefs. It's a great adventure story throughout India. So it was perfect. So I said, yes, I'll have a go. But of course, I had to start at the very beginning. So I spent 2 years with my head inside the books and basically learning as much as I could about publishing books, from going through the editing process, formatting the books, cover design, how to release your books, your social media campaigns. So I really went into learning that process back to front.
Yeah.
And also, as part of that project, we decided to do an audiobook, which was one of the greatest decisions I ever made, because I got introduced to Pro Audio Voices, which was a really amazing experience working with Becky, yourself, and your team at that time, which was, it's going back a couple of years now, but it was just really nice to be taken on the journey, because I know some experiences with people in other companies, you feel as though you're a little bit separate from the process. But I feel like with Pro Audio Voices, you go on that concierge service, you feel like you're going along on the journey. And for me, that's very important, especially when it comes to releasing work into the world, because it's a very special moment when you share that book or that story, and you want it to be genuine and you want it to have been a beautiful experience along the way.
Yeah. And I have to just say, from our side of things, that I was really excited to be working on this book as well, because the content also really speaks to me and, the journey, and being able to, you were just really wonderful to work with. And so was your dad. And then also being able to bring in some of those like musical elements that we incorporated into that book was just, I think, magical.
I'm blown away, Becky, about the musical side of it that we put together, because we had Wallace. It's Harvey Wallace?
Wallace Harvey.
Yes.
Wallace Harvey.
Wallace Harvey, yes. My apologies. He spent a lot of time composing parts for that project, and what he ended up with was just the most amazing music, and we intertwined it throughout the book.
Yeah.
There are two main characters that go on the journey throughout the book, and they're Baals, so they're wandering minstrels basically, and their life is built around music. So it was really important to have that musical element added to the audiobook. And I didn't know if that was even possible when I first started out working with you guys. I remember asking you guys, can we add music? Is that something that's done in an audiobook? So I really had no idea about audiobooks at that time. And to be honest, I wasn't even reading a lot of audiobooks or listening to audiobooks at that time, which has changed since then. Now I don't read books. I only listen to audio. So
right. You get hooked.
Yeah, look, it's really, it's such a big part of the industry now. Audio it's for me the easiest way to listen to books.
Yeah.
So it was really fitting to do that part of it, because I was learning the print publishing side of it, and then going on the journey of audio and learning that process and having that released. It just felt like that was the whole package that you can do for publishing a book. And of course, I was doing it for my dad, so it was a great learning experience. I made lots of mistakes along the way. I learned a lot of things. So it was, a wonderful, wonderful experience. And obviously the connection to you guys was a really special thing to have come out of it.
And there is a little bit for any of our listeners that want to go back to one of our earlier episodes. We did an interview also with your dad, episode 29 of Audiobook Connection podcast. But I thought there was just some beautiful synchronicities. So you and your dad were working on that, the book side, and Jerry Lee, my daughter, and I were working on the audiobook side of it. And so it just felt like this, a very, very special experience in so many ways.
Yeah, it's so true. And I really felt that as well. It really just gelled nicely together, and we all sort of, it felt really real, the whole project. So it was nice to have that family connection connected to it, which is a big part of my life. Family is very important. So it's nice to have been able to intertwine that into the project, because I feel now, looking back at the product, the print and the audio, they're really amazing products. It's
they really
such an amazing body of work, and I couldn't be more proud that was sort of where I kicked off my work in the publishing industry. So it's kind of a really nice, solid, concrete base.
Yeah. And we'll make sure to include in the description and show notes, the link to find the audiobook as well as the print book. So, yeah, great. And then sort of moving along in this journey, now we got that audiobook produced and out there, and some little bit of time went by, and then it was around last August or September, I think, that you joined the Pro Audio Voices team as a project manager. And so now you're helping to guide other authors through their audiobook projects. So what's that shift been like for you?
Well, I remember that day really well. You sent out an email sort of putting out the call to your community around, we're looking for people to join the Pro Audio Voices team. And I saw the email and I first looked at it and I thought, that I don't know anything about audio. That's not really my space. But then I thought about it a little bit more and I thought, well, I've got some experience in publishing. By that point, I'd published 7 books by that time. So I'd gone through the process. I'd guided authors through the publishing process. So I knew that side of it, and I knew Pro Audio Voices they take a lot of pride in that side of it, which is that sort of concierge service, that guiding you through the journey. So I knew I had that kind of skills of working with people. But of course, I had no skills in audio. I was like, I've got no idea where to start with that, But when we decided to work together, we got on, and your lovely team helped me learn the ropes, and I was blown away by how the processes you already had built in place. So I basically just had to jump in and learn how the journey worked from step 1 to step finish, and it was a really great transition, actually, because it was really a new space for me and something I enjoyed doing immensely from the beginning. And I got to learn a lot about audio and the different processes that are required to actually get an audiobook done. It's a lot more complicated than I had anticipated. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people involved, audio engineers, the narrator, the author. So you've got to juggle a lot of different people, and you need to manage that quite well. Otherwise it can get lost, so you have to be very clear on what's being done. And obviously there are different steps, and it's very key in the beginning to get a clear understanding from the author of what they're trying to achieve, what they want from their audiobook. And then also, just the manuscript prep. I didn't even think about that, but just for me, like prepping a manuscript in print, obviously there's the editing and then the formatting, and then it's kind of ready to go. But Jerry Lee, she takes a lot of time and she preps manuscripts, sets out like track numbering and stuff. It's just things I didn't really think about at that time, but makes complete sense, because when you go to organize the project and bring it together, you need it all to be in line. Otherwise it can get all very confusing.
Yeah. And you certainly brought a level of project management skills and just being the kind of person who's easy to work with, ready to jump in and learn the processes and such. It's been absolutely delightful having you on the team.
Oh, it's been a delight. I've enjoyed myself so much.
That's good. It's good. And then, so of course, sometimes we have authors who are narrating, which adds another whole level, right? So what are some of the things that you've discovered in the process in working with authors who are doing their own narration?
Yeah, well, this is also another element, because there are different styles of audiobooks that can be created. I initially thought, okay, it's just get a narrator in and do the book. But no, there's so many different types of projects that you can do. And one of them, like you mentioned, is the author narration, which I just finished up working on a book with an author called John Nance. And his book is Rediscovering Republicanism, which was an interesting book for me to work on, but it was a really amazing experience. And he did the narration himself. And that added a whole new element because he wasn't a professional. He had never done it before.
Yeah.
So he was learning. I was learning as well along the way.
Right.
But we had amazing support from you and Kathy, another team member from Pro Audio Voices, who works closely with authors to help them set up their recording kit, get them to understand the process, teach them the ways, So that was a really amazing experience to see him transform as an author throughout that process, because he picked it up really quickly. I'm not sure if this is the same for everybody. Everybody learns differently, but he seemed to pick it up quite quickly and he spoke very well. So we didn't have a lot of complications there. He was very confident in what he was doing. He obviously knew his book very well. So he just sort of jumped in and he got the stuff recorded really quickly. And it was a really great experience to see it come together from that side, because it was really close to him as the author. And it was very important for him to have it in his voice and read in his voice. So I think that really shone through it in the end. Yeah.
And then you've also had a project where the author did just a short segment. So her voice is in the project. This is an author in South Africa. So that was a different kind of experience.
Yes, so I had a very different experience working on Jackie Burnett's book, Life is Not Yoga. An amazing journey, a very long journey, which is just all finalized now. I see her book went up online a week and a half ago. So I was really, really happy to see that up online. I was actually chatting to her on the phone the other day and she is over the moon. She's really, really happy.
Yeah.
But
it's kind of like having a new baby, isn't it? You're the uncle. And
I was like, yes. So I actually showed my mum. I said, oh, look, Mum, this one's up online finally. And she said, I'm going to download it. So she's already started listening to that. So that was...
great.
That was great. But that was a really amazing experience, that book. We found a narrator who her voice really suited the style of the book, and Jackie loved the sound of her voice. And I listened to it over and over again, and the voice really did suit the style of book that Jackie was going for.
Yeah.
And we had some back and forths in the beginning. We had some complications getting the narrator started. And anyway, we got through all that, and I'm so happy we did, because the final product is exactly what Jackie was looking for, But she also did some readings throughout the book, which is quite interesting. So you've got that crossover between having a professional narrator and having an author speak on it, not doing the entire book, just doing parts. And she found it quite confronting in the beginning. And I tend to agree with that. I find it very difficult to listen to my own voice and to speak on camera and stuff. I always look back at it and go, oh, I could have done that better. I could have done this. So we kind of guided her through that process as well, which was great, a great experience. And we had to get her set up in a professional studio, and she's based in Cape Town in South Africa. So that's another element that I really enjoy, is the ability to do this remotely.
Yeah.
Which, you couldn't have done not that long ago, with Zoom and with all this ability to connect via Drive and all this ability to do things online has allowed us to do projects that could be scattered across the world, which is amazing. So I was
Right.
in Brazil, and Jackie was in Cape Town in South Africa, and you were over in the US. It's like
Yeah.
really amazing that we could all bring all those parts together to then have this one whole project that's streamless throughout from beginning to
Yeah.
end,
Yeah.
and had influence from all around the world. It's quite a special thing to look at.
Yeah. And I know that along the way in that project, because this podcast is sort of the behind the scenes, there were some challenges in terms of the scheduling, the narrator being able to deliver on a schedule that we were hoping for. So there is a bit of, and certainly was in this case, a bit of juggling between marketing plans for a very proactive author who's, really got their marketing act together, and then having to work through the challenges that sometimes can come up, and they can come up for all kinds of reasons. And we certainly have seen this over the last couple of years with COVID as a part of our world picture with, narrators getting sick or having, health challenges. So it's a very complicated picture, as you said. And it's so exciting to be able to work together and through the challenges as well. We all have the same goal. We want it to be the best it can be. And we also want to, get it ready in as timely a fashion as we can. And sometimes it feels like those are almost in opposition, but we're really holding both of those to be able to move forward and get the project rolling out as best it can.
Yeah, and it's such a big part, especially as a project manager and in any business space as well, is managing that client expectation, from the get-go. And it's not always clear cut. And obviously there's a lot of other things that can come into play that can throw you off that course. But all you can do is be as prepared as possible and be clear and honest about the situation. I've found, especially when you're talking to authors, especially like Jackie, she was really organized. She ran a very, very tight social media campaign. She's very professional. She runs a business off the back end of it. And so she was very on the ball. She was very ready to hit those
target deadlines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I found it very difficult because normally I was in a position where if needs be, I'd work through the night and I could personally get it done.
Right.
But when you're working with like a narrator where it's only her or it's only the narrator that can complete that task, you're very much in their arms. You're pretty much waiting for them to provide the final product for you to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
So that was something I had to work with, and I wasn't able to set a target or set any milestone that we could hit because I was really just waiting for the narrator to come through in the end. And that was quite a challenging aspect to work with. But
yeah,
it was a really good learning curve because I now know that you have to be very clear from the upfront, from the start. And when you're having that conversation with the narrator, okay, these are our expectations. These are the target deadlines. We must make those deadlines. Do you think you can make that deadline? Tell me honestly, is that something that you can make? It's all right if you can't. Don't worry, tell me. So then I can talk to the client and chat with them and say, look, we're not going to be able to make that timeline. Let's push it out a little bit. This is more reasonable. And they'll be happy with that because they know.
Yeah.
They know what's going on. They don't feel like they're being forgotten,
Right. You bring up such a great point about in the position of project management, there is so much of we're depending on other people, to do certain things. It's both the narration, it's also the audio engineering side of things, the mastering, there's all these other components, right? And it's important to, like, that clear communication from everybody is so important. And then, of course, then we can keep our clients well informed as to what's going on, And then I was going to say that there are occasions, in a narrator, for example, may have something terrible happen or they disappear and we don't really know what's happened. Thankfully, it doesn't happen frequently, but it can happen, and just, we then will deal with those situations, where it's like that usually will mean that we need to recast a project, but it can set things back in timeline. Again, I don't think we really had that happen before COVID came along and sort of changed our world so dramatically. But it's just something that, at that peak behind the scenes, it's something that can happen. And just to be aware.
Yeah, that's right. Especially this, I think, like with Jackie's project, it was right in that time where COVID was such a big part of our existence at that time, and it was very challenging. And I do know that the narrator, she did get COVID, so that was an element that was added into the project, into the mix. And yeah, I guess it was just something you can't avoid that happening. It's about trying to decipher that problem as well, because sometimes you can't get a clear message from people as to where they are and what's going on for them.
Yeah.
So you really need to be very careful, because it's easy to get emotional and go, oh, you need to have this done by this moment. But you need to step back and go like, okay, what's happening for you in your life? There must be something going on that's holding up proceedings. How can we address that situation?
Right.
What can we put in place to assist you, to help you? Can we provide prompts? Can we put together a recording schedule? What are the things that will make the path of least resistance for you to get this done?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really a compassionate approach to project management.
Yeah.
And I very much in line, I think, with our core values and who we want to be in the world, So
the other side of it, which I wanted to mention, is that the narrator can be people that we've worked with in the past, but often can be people that might be the first time that you've worked with them. So managing how they work, it's the blind leading the blind in the beginning a little bit, because we don't know how they work, what's their workflow is like, how quickly they get jobs done. So that can be kind of an additional factor that you only pick up on job as you're going along. But what I do know is that the Pro Audio Voices team has a very great team of editors and masters that work with audio all the time. And that part of it we can manage quite easily, because we know how they work and we know which editors are busy at what time and what other projects they have on. So you can kind of put together a timeline that's a little bit more concrete, because we know the team will deliver when they're asked to.
Yeah.
So that part of the project is really great, because the team works really well together, and we've got lots of great internal processes that make that happen. And that obviously is because of you, Becky, and you've created such an amazing business over your career, and you've put together all these. The process that you've built for producing audiobooks is amazing. Like I jumped in with zero experience and could do it. You've created that ability for people to follow that journey throughout and come out with an audiobook at the end, which is really special.
I have to really hand a lot of credit to the team overall in being able to develop those processes, because it's not been me alone. But I think what I have been able to do is to build a team that knows that we want their input. We want their help to make it even better. So everyone really is invested in making it the best that it can be, the best experience for everyone involved. And I love that about our team. I feel so honored to have, the team that we have.
I agree.
Let's take a short pause while I share a little bit more about the audiobook Searching for Monkumar, a mystical tale about finding freedom, friendship, and spirituality by Gordon Lee Chambers. Follow an epic pilgrimage of two lifelong friends, wandering minstrels from West Bengal. The novel is set in India at the turn of the century. That was where the original film material which needed the story was shot. Actually, were it not for the original film footage, which set the Indian theme, the book could have been set anywhere in the world. It could just as easily be two shaman walking through Central America, an Aboriginal tracker in the heart of Australia, two monks escaping from Tibet, two medicine mystics in Africa, Sufi poets in Eurasia, or a couple of Christian mystics traveling through Europe. Here's a sample from that audiobook.
Think about it logically. Who are you? He paused to allow the DJ to consider his words before he continued. I mean, who are you, really? Who is speaking these words? Who is seeing these things? Who is hearing these sounds? The photographer left these rhetorical questions hanging. They continued to walk along the narrow lanes in quiet reflection when they were delivered yet another remarkable surprise. Enchanting melodies, floating faintly on the warm night air, drifted within earshot. The DJ's deliberations ceased. His mental anguish stopped. His insatiable appetite for sound took over. As if he were an auditory bloodhound, he followed this scent down the narrow lanes until he discovered the source. The pale yellow glow of a doorway spilt onto the cobblestone street. The musical ragas were coming from inside. The DJ, a well-versed musician, already knew that the raga was the most important concept that any serious student of Indian music must understand. His excitement became palpable when he judged by the quality of the succulent sounds that the proponent of this particular rendition was an accomplished student. The strings of the sarod were being plucked with mastery, and the music was floating sublimely over the dimly lit threshold. Such was the charm of the exquisite harmonies that they stood in the street, momentarily transfixed as they savored the sounds. The photographer and the DJ looked at each other and grinned. Without invitation, they stepped into the adventure. Raga in Sanskrit means color or passion. This was precisely what greeted them as they stepped through the opening into a cinnamon world of sensual movement, burning incense and sound delights. The dancer caught their eye first. She weaved a sublime spell. In that moment, she was the ultimate enchantress. With bells and rings on her toes, her bare feet stamped out a passionate rhythm. She twisted in time to the tabla drum. The sound of the bells around her ankles rang out in unison. A colorful red and green sari swirled around her slender body. Long hair flicked wildly around her head and shoulders. Dark, intense eyes, the essence of mystique, bored into the souls of the onlookers. Uplifted hands, ordained with henna designs, snaked above her head and flew out to the side. Like wings, they gracefully flapped as she whirled and twirled. Her arms folded into her body like a closing flower. In this collapsed form, she was dark and brooding. But she dwelt only momentarily in this shadowy space before she exploded again, opening with a renewed fragrance and passion. Her stunning smile bloomed and made the world a more beautiful place. The DJ was totally mesmerized by her form, movement, and beauty. The senior sarod player, who until then had been coupled in an emotional embrace with his instrument, looked up. With an infectious smile, he beckoned them to enter. The photographer pointed to his camera, signaling his desire to do some filming. The sarod player, still smiling, nodded before resuming the intimate affair with his instrument, bringing the sounds of this ancient land to life.
The photographer relished the opportunity to introduce his art and started to capture this spontaneous spectacle. The DJ pressed his mouth to the photographer's ear, keen to espouse his considerable knowledge on the subject. "Did you know," he whispered, "that although the sarod is a classical Indian instrument, it actually originated from a Persian instrument in the 16th century, the Rajasthani?" West Bengali instrument makers continued making changes to its shape.
Get your copy today at bit.ly/Monkumar. That's bit.ly/MONKUMAR. Is there anything that you would, from where you sit now, is there anything that you would go, oh, now I've learned this thing. And if I were able to communicate that back to, and I was just starting on the author side or the project manager side on the, from the publishing, anything that comes to mind that you would go, oh yeah, that would be a good thing for authors to know as they head into audiobooks. I think you've covered several things in your discoveries, but if there's anything else that jumps out at you.
Yeah, look, I think if you're making the jump from print to audio, you need to understand that they're two different medias. They're two, obviously they're telling the same story, but they're very different in the way that they're presented. It's a completely different experience when you sit down and read a book to when you sit down and listen to a book. So you need to kind of take that into mind when you're producing a audiobook, because I find that it's easy to get caught up in the detail in audiobooks, like really fine detail, or this word was slightly wrong, or, if you just step back a bit and listen to the flow of it and you go, actually the narrator's natural flow works nicely there, and instead of going and trying to pick through it with a fine tooth comb and pull out every individual thing so that it aligns directly with your print version. Obviously, we want to get it as close as possible, of course. But sometimes, just that natural flow is better than going back and editing it over and over and over again, because you don't know where the narrator is going to be. It might be 3 weeks later and the narrator might have had a terrible morning or something, and they come in and their voice sounds different. So you're never going to get that exact same flow as you do when they first read through it. So I think it's good to look at it and just take a little bit of a step back before you match it up with your manuscript and go, well, it's not word for word. You step back and go, okay, well, actually, if I was listening to that as a new ear, as somebody has never listened to this before, would it make sense? Would it flow nicely?
Right.
Because that, I think, is very important to make sure that it doesn't get too chopped up along the way. Otherwise, you lose that natural that comes through.
No, you make an excellent point. I will often liken it to the forest for the trees kind of thing. It's like sometimes authors will get so close to it. It's like being right up, staring close to the bark of the tree, and wait a minute, this little thing is not exactly right the way I imagined it, right? But if you just pull back and have that listening experience. And it's actually a great segue into, because I want to talk a little bit about the project you're working on now. And this is exactly how I listened to the audiobook that we're currently producing for my book. The book we're talking about is The Left Turn, Two Lives, Worlds Apart. And it's co-narrated. So I narrated the female chapters for that character, and then we had another narrator who did, J.S. Arquin, who did the male part of the book. So when I listened to his files, I just closed my eyes and listened and really paid attention to the story. That was the best way, I think, to review audio files, because I was then able to hear, there were a couple of things that I went, oh, wait a minute, is that right? Sometimes it was me discovering a typo because he'd read it right, and it was an error in the book. But I might not have caught it had I done it, just following the script, because those are the very kinds of things that our brains just fix without even bothering to notice. So let's talk a little bit from your perspective, you're as project manager for this one, what this has been like for you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Becky. I feel very privileged to be working on your book. It seems very fitting, as I worked with you on my father's book, and now I get to work with you and Jerry Lee on your book. It's very fitting, and it's a great privilege to have been given this opportunity, and I'm very grateful. Look, this project is amazing, and so far it's obviously working with you, Becky, because you know the industry so well and you're so professional that it's flowing really, really well. And obviously JS here he's very good as well. He's pumped out the tracks really quickly and really, really high quality. And yeah, it's a great little team dynamic going on at the moment because it's flowing very, very quickly. And just relating back to that point about how you listen through with your eyes closed, you listen to the actual listening experience, So you've listened from beginning to end and you've picked out the things that naturally get pulled out by your ear. So that I think is it's hard for a lot of people to believe, but it's true. Your natural ear actually will pull out those parts more than you know. You think, I've got to be looking at every line to be able to hear that. No, it's not. It's not true. Your ear will say, "Hold on, that's not right," or something. Word's not. I don't remember writing that word or something like that, and then you can reference it. But it's quite amazing how quickly we've run through this process, and that's another side of it, is that the more you request edits, the more you go back and forth. It's got to go back to the editor. It's got to, there's a lot of hands that it's got to go through. So that also extends your timeline. So in terms of like, if you're looking to hit target deadlines, it's very beneficial if you don't have to edit multiple times, because it's not an easy process to go in and edit a track, make sure it sounds good, make sure all the levels are right, make sure you cut the right parts.
That the tone is correct where you've done a pickup. Yeah. So this book is, as I said, it's two narrators. And in the first part of the book, most of the book, they're kind of running parallel. They're not like in scenes with each other. And at the end of the book, they are together. And so I thought, wouldn't it be perfect to do sort of a full cast treatment on those chapters where we're in the same scenes? And so we did that. And I think it upholds and supports the whole journey of the book, to be able to be separate and then that coming together at the end. And it was just a really fun process to do that with JS. So he's also based in Portland, Oregon, where I am. But we each were in our own studios, which was appropriate because even though we could have physically come into the same space, all of our audio up to, in the other chapters was in our separate spaces. So it made sense to maintain that for post-production and mastering reasons. But to be able to be on a call and to go through and record those chapters as if we were in the same room, so we could have those genuine conversations and react to each other. And it's so rewarding. We actors miss being, those of us who haven't been able to be in theaters, on stage for some time, kind of miss that. And this is about the closest I've gotten, is to be able to do these kinds of sessions.
Yeah, and it's such an amazing dynamic. I was listening to that the other day, where that part where you guys have what Becky's just describing there. So there's this back and forth between the two characters, the dialogue, and doing that in a sense live recording almost, where you guys going back and forth, you get that natural banter, you get that feeling that it's actually two people there having a real conversation. It's like it really shines through when you do it in that way. Obviously, both of you, yourself, Becky, and JS, have a lot of experience narrating, that shines through. But the way you two got together and did that, you guys jumped on Zoom, I believe, and you had
Yeah.
that, and so you get that element of it's the same day, you guys are reading together, it feels very together rather than
Right.
it's been done separately. So you feel like the energy, you both are on that same energy. The thing is flowing together rather than it's just picking up from where somebody else left off.
Right. Because it can so easily, when we're not doing the scenes, we're acting as if the other person is saying the lines the way we hear them in our head, but they don't always say them the way we think they're going to say them, right? When JS says what he says in a particular way, it affects the way I'm going to say my next line. So to do that completely separately, we miss out on that opportunity to have that really genuine exchange.
Look, I'm just really excited to be working on The Left Turn with you, and I can't wait to get that out, which we should be getting that out pretty soon.
Yeah.
I know you've got plans to launch it on Amplify in the next month. So I'm really looking forward to getting that out and being a part of your book. I just was thinking, relating back to that point about working with the two narrators in the same similar space. I was wondering, for you as an author, obviously you wrote the book. You mentioned an interesting point before. You said that JS read something in a way that's kind of potentially surprised you. And you picked up on that. So it must be quite an interesting experience, because when you write something, you write it in your head and you hear it the way you have written it potentially, and then you can see how other people might pick it up in a different way, and maybe for the best or maybe not, or it must be quite an amazing feeling to see how people represent your work.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And I have to say, the casting process, I had some great narrator options that it was hard to choose. And I didn't think I would have quite such a hard time choosing, but they were really, each one brought a different aspect of the book, a little bit more alive, right? Anyway, overall, I thought JS was really getting the feel of the book overall. And definitely there were, the way that he would do, some of the dialogue was not the way I heard it in my head initially when I was writing it. But I love the way he does it. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, that's who James is, and being able to allow for that, I mean, I know very well, and I've told many authors, it's never going to sound the way that it sounds in your head. It can't. It's impossible. I have a whole podcast episode just about that. But I encourage authors to go into the process without, just let go of that, any expectation around that. Forget what it sounds like in your head and find out what it could sound like. And that allowing just can open things up and some beautiful discoveries, and like taking your book to a whole new level can happen.
And that's the beauty of audio. And it really is amazing to be able to bring other people into your creation and see their take on it. And I truly believe that it enhances your work and what you have there already. It adds that new additional element to the book and gives it depth and body and feel. And as long as you've got an open mind and you're ready to go on the journey and let people delve into that world, that creation of yours, it's a really good option, audio. And I'm really grateful to have been lucky enough to work in the space and have grown some knowledge around audiobooks from yourself, Becky. And it's really, really inspiring. And I'm looking forward to working on more books in the future with you.
Absolutely. Well, that seems like a great place to wrap up. Thank you again so much, Jarryd. This is Jarryd Chambers, and I want to just one more time highlight the book that we initially worked on Searching for Mon Kumar that we did with your father, Gordon Lee Chambers. So thanks so much for spending this time with me.
Thank you, Becky. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.